Hi everybody, Anahita here. Hope you're having a beautiful Friday. I am coming to you today to talk about the importance of healing avoidant patterns in our lives. And so, what are avoidant patterns? Avoidant patterns are essentially any pattern that keeps us distracted from a matter that or a pattern that continues to show up in our lives, in our health, in our well-being, in our relationships. Anything that keeps us distracted from tending to the matter can be categorized as avoidance. And we engage in avoidance, and all of us do this. So if you're someone that you're like, oh my God, I'm doing this and I feel bad, or I don't know how to fix it, this is really a pattern that exists in all individuals to some extent, more or less. But today I want to share with you how we identify our avoidant patterns and why it's so important to work towards healing those avoidant patterns. And so how we often engage with avoidance is by distracting ourselves. That could be through social media use or other types of media use. It could be through substances. It could be through overworking. It could be through denial that it actually doesn't exist, this pattern doesn't exist. It could also be through our mind. Sometimes we can really try to avoid a situation by telling a different story to ourselves, hoping that it will go away, but it rarely ever does. And so it's important to pay attention, because when we do not do the work to identify our personal avoidant patterns and take steps towards healing them, then we actually cannot experience any healing in the rest of our lives. Because if we're busy avoiding the pain and the struggle, we're never going to be able to address it. We're never going to be able to heal it. So the first step is recognizing and acknowledging that there's opportunity here for healing, opportunity for growth, opportunity for a different perspective to work with. So that's, without avoidance, we can't really get there. So that's the first step. So where does avoidance really come from? Most of us learn avoidance through our families, our childhood experiences, our culture, our upbringing. If we grew up in a family that talking about challenges or difficult emotions was considered taboo, or things were shoved under the rug in a family in an effort to maintain an image often, then avoidance is often deeply rooted in our behavior. Avoidance can also happen if in the past expression of our struggle, expression of our emotions was faced by violence, and we were shut down, and we were made to believe that it's not okay to express our discomfort. It's not okay to express our pain. And as a result, we develop avoidant patterns, so we don't really look at the pain because, we did not feel heard at some point. Avoidant patterns also happen as a result of hopelessness. So if a condition continued to occur in your life and you continue to take active steps to address it and it didn't shift, you weren't successful for whatever reason, the environment was harsh, the conditions were challenging, then at some point we shut down and we drop into a state of hopelessness where we feel like there is no option for us. In polyvagal training, which is a training I'll hope to offer soon, but this is a model that I teach my clients, is that we learn hopelessness. If we continue, if something happens in our external environment or in our mind that presents an existential challenge, our nervous system goes into a state of sympathetic response, a state of activation, and I gotta take some action, I gotta do something. There's this energizing, mobilizing feel, so I gotta do something to change this condition. And what happens is that if we continue staying in that state and continue trying different things to address the condition, address the threat, and it doesn't work, we tend to drop into a state of dorsal, which is associated with a sense of despair and hopelessness. And so if we've experienced that sense of despair and hopelessness in the past, then if that condition occurs, if that challenge shows up again in our life, our first response to it is to avoid it because there's too much pain and there's just not enough solution historically to go there. So these are some of the ways that we drop into an avoidant pattern. Now, why is it important to address this pattern? It's really important because if we're not willing to acknowledge that there's a problem, we can't really fix it. And a lot of times we tend to do this because there's a lot of discomfort. And so the first step in addressing avoidant patterns is to befriending our discomfort, learning how to tend to our needs. So think of that struggle that's showing up, that pain, that challenge that's showing up as a child that is asking for attention. And what we do is instead of tending to the need very often in an avoidant pattern, we try to pretend it doesn't exist. Now, sometimes that challenge grows and it overwhelms us, and then we can't really do anything but have to face it and deal with it. And by then we are so activated and overwhelmed that we don't really have access to our tools, even if we have a robust set of tools. So one of the perils of avoidant patterns is that we don't pay attention when we can take active steps and still have agency to address the issue until sometimes it's too late. Another way we do this is, we reach for substances. We reach for substances to numb the pain, and it never really truly addresses the root cause. And so we continue repeating those patterns over and over again, and we feel victimized by these conditions. We feel that our life just keeps repeating itself, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so part of addressing the avoidant challenge is to be able to develop tool sets, a really robust, personalized tool set that works for you, that you can reach for before you move into a state of overwhelm. And so noticing and understanding and noticing those states of, I'm in a state of overwhelm, or I'm in a state of collapse and hopelessness. And so noticing those states and then having the tools to work with those states to find our way back into a state of balance. And so a lot of times when we find discomfort, our first response is to look away, is to avoid it or distract ourselves and pretend it doesn't exist. And so I've been working on a process that helps us actually befriend that discomfort, because without fully befriending it, understanding it, we cannot have an opportunity to heal it. Now, here's the good news. When we move through these challenges, when we're avoiding those challenges, if we're not looking at them, what we do is we create a monster. We create this big thing that, oh my God, this challenge is so big, I can't address it because I haven't been looking at it for so long, that we create our personal monsters in this process. But if a lot of times, I notice this all the time, I experience it, I notice it in my work with my clients, this happens a lot. When an individual starts to tend to the struggle, tend to the pain, get curious, bring in that inner child, and instead of avoiding it and pushing it away, actually embracing it and getting curious. Hey, little child, what do you need to feel safe right now? What would help you feel better right now? And in that process, initially there can be a grief. We can have a grief process where we feel like we haven't really checked in with this part of ourselves for so long. And it's okay to have that grief process. What's not okay is to judge ourselves and, feel like, oh my God, I failed myself. What we want to look at is that, wow, like I have been in so much pain that I haven't been looking at this part of me. So a lot of times when we tend to that inner child, tend to that need, and get curious, what do I really need in this space? And start to really use our force of creativity to start develop some options of, okay, this seems to be at the root of what I need. And how am I going to make it happen? What are some different ways? So we come up with many different ideas. We brainstorm, we use our creativity and come up with all these different ideas that will help us feel better. And then we use our sense of intuition, our inner guidance. What would feel best to me? If I have 10 options here that I'm looking at, which of those feels the best to me? And really allow that guidance to come through and take steps towards addressing it. The first time you intercept some of those avoidant patterns is the first time that you will feel empowered to do it again. And so the first time we do this, we're breaking a neural reprogramming that's just been our go-to default mode. Oh, when I notice this emotion, this challenge, this is how I respond to it. And if it was effective, then that challenge wouldn't continue showing up. So if it's showing up, then it's a sign that it's not effective. And so in this space, we take active steps to slowly begin to change our response patterns. And so this is not going to happen overnight, it's a struggle. But what's really important is to approach it with a sense of deep compassion. Compassion is non-negotiable. We start with a sense of deep compassion for ourselves, and we then get curious about where is this coming from and how am I going to tend to my needs? What is the deeper need? A lot of times, almost 90% of the time, what we think our struggle is about is actually not it. And so when we go deeper in and we ask, yeah, but what is behind that topic? So a lot of times the client will come and say, I am really struggling because I feel like I'm so lonely, nobody likes me, and I'm feeling really challenged in my community. And so what is that about? Well, it's about people not liking me. Well, okay, well, what is that really about? Why do you feel that way? Why is it important? And as we go deeper into that understanding, very often we find that it's one of a handful of core wounds. It's something at some point happened that we didn't feel worthy, or we felt that our expression didn't matter, or that we felt like we weren't loved, or that we weren't accepted, or that there were so many impossible conditions that we needed to fulfill in order to be worthy of love, worthy of acceptance. And so when we get to these deeper patterns, then as an adult, I can tend to the need of the inner child. If the inner child comes to me and says, I'm not feeling worthy and I'm not feeling loved, and I feel like I don't know how to connect, then how am I going to respond to that child? With empathy, with compassion, with some simple, not complex, simple steps and simple solutions and reassurance that will help that inner child. And I see profound transformation through this work when we actually pause and instead of looking away, turn towards the challenge and the discomfort and work our way through finding and befriending the discomfort, because these are the areas that the healing occurs, that the wisdom is there, that all the keys that we need for our healing and our transformation is really all in there. It's within our discomfort. And until we begin to befriend our discomfort, we're not going to have access to any of that. It's like this little box of our shadow and our challenges that is sitting there, and we don't dare open it up. But how am I going to know what needs to be healed if I have this avoidant pattern and I'm not willing to look at it? So it's that willingness to take a look. So this is one of the ways that we work together with clients to identify what's underneath the challenge, what's underneath the discomfort, and begin by slowly befriending those state of discomfort is the opportunity for us to open up those gems and cultivate those gems. And you guys, it's not, a lot of times we make these to be really big, and it's really not often that big. We create our personal demons, and we think this is, oh my God, will require me decades of healing. I don't have the courage, I don't have the resources. And often it's not. It's really just the longer we don't look at it, the longer we avoid it, the longer we distract ourselves with media, with food, with work, with sex, with substances, the longer we're delaying our healing process and the bigger we're turning these demons to be. And they're not often. When we tend to them, we often find scared children, Not often, I mean, short of really complex, really awful history, a lot of times you find that a child, just one or two small experiences in life that weren't even from outside perspective, those big events and experiences, there wasn't physical abuse, just deep emotional abuse. A lot of times it's just a perspective of the world that we develop through one or two different interactions in our childhood. And so a lot of times the healing work is actually just going there and tending to the need of the inner child. It's not about going through all our history and uncovering all of that. And a lot of times I think this holds people back from doing healing work, is because they're afraid of what they might uncover and how long this is going to take. Am I going to feel worse in the process? And I'm here to tell you that if you follow this process, you're not going to feel worse. You're going to experience pretty significant changes pretty quickly, but you got to be willing to take a look. You got to be willing to take a look with a sense of compassion and empathy for yourself. You got to be willing to take a look with curiosity. You got to be willing to use your creative force, your intuition, to support you in that process. So I hope that this material help you. If you're noticing that you have avoidant pattern, I have something to tell you. Everybody does. So don't feel bad if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I have an avoidant pattern. We all do. So take this as an opportunity the next time that this shows up for you to tend to that need, to actually start with compassion and actually, so first step, which I'm going to take a little step back. First step is actually feel that in your body. Oh, I'm noticing that avoidance, and where do I feel it in my body? And I'm going to notice where that is in my body. Breathe into it. Be with it instead of wanting to turn away from it. And use some compassion. Practice some compassion for yourself as you're feeling this challenge and that sensation in the body. Don't get in a story. That sensation in the body, can I just breathe into it? Can I just notice it? Can I have compassion for myself for feeling this feeling inside and not try to analyze it or get rid of it, just be with it. And then from there, once you notice that sense of empathy and compassion for yourself, then you have the opportunity to open up doors of curiosity and say, oh, well, I wonder, what do I need? And this is the opportunity to connect with the inner child. What do you need, little inner child? What would make you feel safe right now? What would make you feel better? And really go from there. Instead of avoidance, turn towards the struggle and do so with a deep sense of empathy and compassion for yourself, deeply embodied within your body and present in the moment as you do this. So I hope that this information and this live stream served you and you learned something new, or you developed some level of compassion and a new perspective. If you have any questions about the work that I do with individuals at this capacity, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you. I would love to support you. You know, a lot of times people think, you know, oh, I might not be able to afford, you know, this type of work. And I'm just here to tell you that I work with individuals. It's true, this type of work and very integrative approach, you know, it takes resources to make it happen. But at the same time, if you have a very specific thing going on in your life and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to fix it, and I feel like if I could just get a couple different perspective shifts, somebody to lift me up, to give me this other perspective, to help me go into this pattern, then I can feel better, just reach out to me. We'll figure it out. We can create something that's small and create transformation in a matter of 2-3 sessions instead of the long-term sessions that I do with people 3 months, 6 months, a year. So don't let that hold you back. I'm just here to tell you that it's not, if you haven't been able to shift it on your own, get some help. And I get help. You know, don't have it all figured out. And a lot of times we have blocks around integrating our own practices. So I go out there and ask for help. And sometimes the help I ask for is like, you know what? I think I only need someone to give me this deep perspective for a matter of couple days. And then I got it after that. I'm just going to run with it. And if I have questions, I'll come back. And this is what this group is for. So that when you've done working with me, if you have questions, you can come here and ask those questions. And every time you ask questions and you're vulnerable with your process, you're really empowering other people to also open up and be vulnerable about their process. So please don't hesitate to reach out if I can be of support to you in any shape or form. I love you all so much. And if you would like other topics, you know, remember there's a little poll in a group. So if you'd like other questions that you have that you'd like answered, add those questions to the poll. I'm just going through them and answering them one at a time. Thank you all for joining me. I love you all so much. Have a beautiful weekend. Many blessings.